Catalonia's leader has signed a symbolic declaration of independence from Spain. Carles Puigdemont is now calling for talks with Madrid, but the Spanish government is refusing to negotiate. With its worst political crisis in decades now only stalled, not resolved, what's the way forward for the divided country? This is Inside Story. Hello again, I'm James Bays. The leaders of Spain's Catalonia region are calling on the world to recognise it as an independent and sovereign state, but not just yet. Late Tuesday, the Catalonian president put its independence bid on hold by suspending the declaration. He says he wants to try to negotiate with the Spanish government first. But the government in Madrid says that Spain's unity is guaranteed by the constitution and cannot be questioned. So, with the two sides on such extreme ends of the issue, can they find a middle ground? We'll get to our guests in a moment, but first, Jonah Hull reports from Barcelona.
He arrived at a parliament building bristling with expectation. A heavy police presence hinted at the weighty announcement to come. But Carles Puigdemont, president of Catalonia's regional government, stopped short of a full declaration of independence.
As president, it's my responsibility to declare that Catalonia should become an independent state in the shape of a republic.
Should become, the words greeted with rousing applause in the chamber before the independent state part was put on hold.
We asked the Parliament to suspend any effects of the Declaration of Independence so that we can have dialogue and so that we can find the necessary solution. We need to lower tensions and show our will and commitment to meet the demands of the Catalan people.
The reaction in Madrid came swiftly.
The speech that the Catalan president has made today is a speech by a person who doesn't know where he is, where he's going, or with whom he wants to go. The government cannot accept that the Catalan referendum be validated because it's been suspended by the Constitutional Court.
Having consistently refused to talk, one centrist politician suggested the time may have come for the government to compromise.
I think the better way they can solve the problem is with a negotiation, some kind, as I said, of mediation.
In Barcelona, the faithful who gathered to watch the speech on big screens left deflated, but accepted that all was not lost.
I'm happy that he's given a lapse of time in order for people to think.
We really don't understand what's the situation, we can say. What does it mean what the president just said?
So, a signed declaration, but independence deferred. Puigdemont's speech stipulated no timeline for talks with Madrid. The drama of Catalonia's independence that has played out in this parliament building for nearly 100 years isn't over yet. Jonah Hull, Al Jazeera, Barcelona.
The Catalans have been pushing for independence for a long time. They say they have a distinct culture and language that merits its own state. In 2015, regional elections saw Catalan nationalists win a razor-thin majority. Two parties formed a coalition, partly based on the promise of holding a referendum within 2 years. That's the vote that was held on October the 1st. 9 out of 10 voters opted for independence, but only about 40% of the region's population actually came out to vote. That was partially because of the violence that marred the election, but polls before the vote suggested about 60% of Catalans want reforms, not secession. Let's bring in our panel to discuss all the issues. From Barcelona, we have Alfred Bosch, who's the leader of a pro-independence ERC party in the Barcelona City Council. From Madrid, Toni Roldan, the economic spokesman for the Ciudadanos party. Translated, that means Citizens Party. And from Nottingham in the UK, Simon Toubeau, who's an assistant professor in the School of Politics and International Relations at the University of Nottingham. Welcome to you all. Alfred, if I can start with you, going back to the speech by your president, the Catalan president, what were your thoughts when you heard his words, particularly the words he said first? Today, I assume the mandate for Catalonia to become an independent state in the form of a republic.
I thought he was very clever. In the first In the first place, because he accepted the mandate of the people. There's nothing else he could do. This was a binding referendum, and the result was a clear yes by 90%. On the second hand, he said he was open to negotiations, so he offered a very last chance to the Spanish government, opening the door, stretching out his hand, and saying, we will leave a couple of weeks for talks. Let's see if this works. Always take into account that democracy is the red line. We're not going to surrender democracy because people voted, and we have to heed to the call and the voice of the people.
Can I ask you, Toni, it must have been a different reaction listening to that speech from there in Madrid.
Quite different indeed. I don't know if you can call democracy to a referendum with a 90% of support to the yes and without any legitimacy of any kind, without any independent electoral board, without any census that is controlled. Everything is biased towards one side, organized by one side, and with a TV that is controlled by the nationalist parties. So I don't think that that's democracy at all. Democracy is being within the law. And what the Catalan government decided to do yesterday was a move, but it was a bit of a show. They decided to say first that they were going to declare independence. Then they said that finally they will not do it now, but that we would fall in the abyss just in a few more days, keeping the blackmailing to the government.
Hang on a minute, Toni. You're calling it blackmailing and a show, but in the speech he said it was a gesture of responsibility to encourage dialogue. Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, well, it is. But when you come from such an increase and such a threat of irresponsibility, bringing basically the country to the brink of collapse and fragmenting a country without any democratic support, it's a huge irresponsibility. Now I think he's made a step, but after that step, he signed a paper with all the pro-independence parties saying, with all the 72 MPs of the Catalan parliament, saying that he was going to continue with that. If you want to negotiate with the government, it needs to be with an open door to negotiating, not by your own rules and excluding any other alternative that is not independent. So I don't think this is really a constructive move. I think still that we need to open a bit of dialogue and to manage to take them towards the legal framework that we all the Spaniards have established, which is basically the Constitution. And within the Constitution, we can do anything, and you can vote. You can do a regional election and do a serious vote where everyone can participate, where there is no bias in the organization, where there is actually transparency, and then everyone can express freely what they want. That's democracy, not what the pro-independence movement has organized.
Simon, can you give us some context? How historic is this moment right now, or how historic could it be?
I mean, I think this is a very historic moment. Nothing like this has ever happened before in Spain, certainly not under the current democratic regime. I mean, there have been past experiences during the early 1930s under the Second Republic when there were such movements towards the establishment of an independent state, and they brought the country into a civil war and into a military dictatorship. So the historical precedent for these events is certainly not a very positive one, and certainly not a very encouraging one. It's at the moment, I think, possibly the strongest challenge to the Spanish constitution and to the Spanish political system that has ever been mounted. So I think it's an important, very grave historic moment. That being said, it looks like democracy and dialogue might win the day. So I think we'll have to see exactly what the repercussions are. I do think that the gesture coming from Carles Puigdemont was a clever one. He managed to separate, on the one hand, what happened with the referendum and what the result of that referendum was from the potentially very serious constitutional implications of that outcome. And he has put that on hold in order to create space for dialogue, albeit with the potential for a threat further down the line. But if that brings some kind of de-escalation and some kind of mollifying of the attitudes of the Spanish central government, then at least they'll be walking towards each other rather than away from each other.
Alfred, in Barcelona, I hope maybe you can give us an idea of what the mood was like there when this announcement was made, because you have a big coalition of people who are on your side. There are some, I'm sure, who liked the first bit, I'm declaring independence, but didn't like the second bit, I'm suspending it. And we saw some pictures of some somewhat disappointed people there. Was there a feeling among some of bemusement or even betrayal?
Well, you see, there's all kinds of reactions, and of course there's lots of people who felt that they had it at the tip of their fingers and then it kind of escaped. But it's still there. I mean, the declaration was done and was signed, and most people here understand that we gotta give a break to ourselves, to the people, and to possible negotiators, and to the international community. We've been experiencing this for 7 years now, with no possibility to get this down to dialogue with the Spanish government. Now that we issued this declaration, we have the whole international community pressing for talks, so it's a good moment to do it. Plus the fact you must realize it's not easy. It's not easy to stretch your hand to somebody who was ordering the police to beat up your grannies and to beat up elderly people and ordinary citizens who just wanted to vote. It's not easy at all. People who were detaining high officials just for organizing a vote. But still, I think Puigdemont's offer and the Catalan government's offer has been very generous and has been very brave in the sense that we must do this because we must give a chance to talks and to negotiation.
Well, the reaction in Madrid was a cabinet meeting followed by a news conference from the Prime Minister. This is what he had to say.
El Consejo de Ministros ha acordado esta mañana.
We've held a cabinet meeting and we've decided the Catalan government must confirm whether or not they have declared independence, regardless of whether it's going to take effect or not. This is a requirement necessary before any other measures can be taken by the government, including invoking Article 155.
Well, Toni, that was the comment that came from Prime Minister Rajoy. In a way, we've had two announcements coming, and it seems both men have slightly pulled their punches. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that the announcement of Rajoy providing a bit more time for the Catalan government to come back to a legal framework where we can talk and not imposing the view of a nationalist and basically populist government that basically has done very similar construction of a narrative than what we saw in Brexit and what we've seen by other populist governments in Europe. I think it's also a very brave step in the sense that, look, I'm not going to do what any other country in Europe would do that has a constitution and that the constitution says that the sovereignty is for the whole of the country and not for a region. He made a brave step of saying, look, I give you a bit more time, so you come back, you cancel this unilateral movement that will only bring you not only to what we are already seeing, which is all these companies and businesses leaving Catalonia already, more than 30. All the big ones have left, and we're not going to allow that you do that unilaterally without a majority. And this, I say that because they talk about referendum and democracy, and we had in 2015 an election where the pro-independence movement took it as a sort of referendum, in the sense that it was plebiscitarian, and they lost. They didn't get a majority of the votes, right? Still, they're going ahead with this. Rajoy is giving a bit more time. I think it's good, and they should cancel the unilateral declaration that will not lead anywhere. It's obvious that it will lead only basically to getting out of the European Union, and then talk, and we can talk about everything within the law, within common rules that make us all equal, and where all the rights are respected, not only the rights of the pro-independence people in Catalonia.
Well, a lot of us journalists have been looking at this. This is the official English translation of the Spanish Constitution, and in particular to Section 155. That part of the Constitution has never been used before. It says If a self-governing community does not fulfil the obligation imposed on it by the Constitution or acts in a way that's seriously prejudicial to the general interests of Spain, the government may, following Senate approval, take all measures necessary to compel the community to meet said obligations. Simon, some have called this the nuclear option.
Yeah, I mean, this would be I think the automatic and natural reaction of the Spanish central government to a unilateral declaration of independence or a proclamation of independence, which is why the Mariano Rajoy asked for greater clarity. He was wanting to find out whether or not they were going to pursue that option, and if so, he was going to follow by invoking Article 155. This article has never been used in the Spanish state of autonomies so far, so it's unclear exactly what would follow from it. But what would probably follow is a suspension of the Catalan parliament and the Catalan government, possibly with the arrest of the members of the Catalan government who have made this proclamation, and it would be followed either by fresh elections or by the imposition of direct rule over the region. So this is a very, very serious measure to take, as it would abrogate parts of the principles of autonomy that govern the Spanish constitution, and would lead to an end to the Catalan system of government.
OK, in a moment, Alfred, I'm going to ask you how you would greet the imposition of that article. But first, Toni, perhaps you could expand for us on how you think this would work. Is it possible that this will be invoked? How likely is it? How long would it take to take back control, for example? What's your view on that?
Let me first just make a quick comment on as regards to the last comment made by Simon. I disagree on one thing. I think everything else was right. The people that have suspended the Statute of Autonomy in Catalonia are not, I mean, it's not going to be through this article. It has already been suspended by the Catalan government. There is a way to change the relationship with Spain that is put in that Statute of Autonomy, and you need 2/3 of the Catalan government, of the Catalan parliament, to change the relationship with Spain. And this pro-independence movement is with the majority +1 is already declaring a unilateral declaration of independence. So for you to realize how terribly undemocratic and irresponsible is what the government is doing. Having said that, the 155 has been somehow, you call it the nuclear option. Look, there are many ways to use that article, and it's present in every serious constitution. It comes actually the writing from the German constitution, right? And it offers many options. One of them would be simply to suspend the parliament and call an election, a really democratic election, where everyone can say, everyone can talk. We play all by the same rules, and that should be, I think, the basic use of this. I don't think anybody wants to see any escalation of anything. I think it's absolutely unfair to reality to claim that the government or anybody that is a unionist supports violence or anything like that. This is a democratic state, and this is democratic precisely because we have a constitution where we can all play the rules, and we can all express our opinions.
Alfred, what's your view of the imposition of this Section 155 and what could happen? Because potentially people could be arrested. I assume potentially you could be arrested.
Yeah, of course. Well, we've seen some of my party colleagues who have been arrested for much less than that, for something like preparing a vote. And so we think that would be total onslaught. It would be a huge mistake on the part of Mr. Rajoy. We've seen whenever Rajoy has resorted to a crackdown, in the last few years and in the last few days, we've seen what the result has been. That has only complicated things further, and that has brought international attention here. So it's really up to him. I mean, if he wants to walk the way of Turkey or of other countries which are constantly attacking their own democracy, that's his choice. We think it would be a huge mistake. We favor rather talking and negotiation and sitting around the table and talking about how, in a democratic way, devolving the issue to the people, because the people have to decide. I mean, the bottom line here is that it's not up to politicians in an obscure office. It's not up to people shouting in the street. It's up to the ballot box, to people voting consciously and be invited to vote. We did that on October the 1st, and that's how things should be done, in the ballot box.
Let me just ask you about one particular element of this, Alfred, and that is the fact that you have your own police force in Catalonia. If this article was invoked, they would supposedly report to Madrid. Who would they actually take their orders from, in your view?
Well, let's see. Are we talking about legal procedures, or are we talking about the right of people to decide themselves? If we're talking about the first thing, then perhaps they would be submitted to the Spanish police or to the Spanish Ministry of the Interior. If we're talking about the right of people to decide about their own things and their own future, obviously this police force belongs to the Catalan people, because they're there for protecting people's rights, protecting the right of people to vote and to express themselves, not to attack people when they're voting.
Okay,
so
Tony,
that's very
Tony,
clear.
I see
what
you
role should the police play here
1 minute,
or
Alfred,
anywhere?
1 minute, Alfred. Tony, I see you shaking your head repeatedly.
Look, I absolutely disagree with what was Alfred saying. Now, one of the proofs of the incredible decentralized country that we have in Spain is precisely that Catalonia, not only they manage all their health system, all their education system, the prisons, they also manage their own police. We are one of the most federalized states in the world, and Catalonia is one of the regions of the world with more autonomy, right? I understand that some people, for whatever reason, despite that we are in the world of globalization and that we need to reduce borders rather than increase them, and we need to accept that we live in a multicultural, multilingual world, they want to build more borders, they want to discriminate between citizens, they want to separate and fragment societies like all nationalists do. I understand that, but this should be done within the space that we have built, which is the Constitution.
You say this referendum is illegal. Why don't you just give the people of Catalonia a legal referendum? Let them all vote. The Scotland option, that's what they did in Scotland, and they voted to stay in the UK. Wouldn't that be the best way to resolve this issue for good?
The fundamental difference is that Scotland is an exception. It's not a rule. If you go to Germany, if you go to Italy, if you go to France, imagine whether Germany would accept an independence referendum from Baviera, for instance. They actually, the Constitutional Court, exactly like the Constitutional Court in Spain, after Baviera demanded a referendum, they said no. Said, look, this is our Constitution. You can change the Constitution, and you can change the article number 2 that says that the sovereign people of Spain are all the people of Spain, not the ones that consider themselves different, which are the nationalists. We could do that, but for that you need majorities, and the nationalist government doesn't even have a majority within Catalonia. And in Spain, honestly, I doubt they will get one. But that's the procedure. I think, I insist, there are ways of having very much autonomy and over the last 30 years, Catalonia and Spain both together, they have progressed more than any other country probably in Europe. The levels, per capita income, everything, education, human capital has gone up massively. And this is because we had a relatively good framework for coexisting. I think breaking all these, fracturing a society that is completely divided in two and insisting on breaking apart is not the solution to anything.
Thanks to our guests, to Toni, to Simon, to Alfred, who had to leave us early. If you want to see the programme again, you can watch it at aljazeera.com. To tell us your thoughts about Catalonia or suggest a topic for future programmes, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also reach us using Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. I'll be back here in just under 24 hours. But for now, from all the team here, bye-bye.